Hey everyone, it's time for another Dear Corinne. It's actually a continuation of last week's letter. If you recall, it was about someone wrote in, Liz Taylor wrote in about her experiences with her mother-in-law and going there for the holidays and feeling really uncomfortable, like her children can't be children because her mother-in-law had ceramics out all over that were breakable, and the kids, had to just sit there like they're in a museum. So last week you talked about expectations. This week we'll talk about boundaries. So I want to just throw this out there, both to Liz and to other listeners. We can choose to set boundaries with our friends and family to protect us. You hear the statement about toxic people and don't allow toxic people in your life to um, bring down your joy or your light or whatever. Well, that's what it is. But when we start to label people as toxic, I think there's danger there that we are missing out on the real person, the full person, because no one is totally toxic. And I don't even know what that term toxic means. So we need to get really clear about what we mean. And if we start to set boundaries and cut people out of our lives for, I've heard of somebody cutting their family out of their lives for personal, professional, spiritual reasons. But there is a cost to that. So if you choose to do that and set boundaries like that, for example, let's just set up a boundary scenario. Let's say Liz decides that she's not going to go to her in-laws' home anymore because her children don't feel comfortable there. They can't run around and be kids. So she could do that. And what would that mean? What effect would that have on her and on her mother-in-law? It would limit her children's contact with their grandmother and grandfather, which I'm not sure is the goal. And it would also create a little bit of other scenario where you're here and they're there, they're the others. So it's not bringing them into your circle. So I believe that as humans, we need to connect and bring people into our circles. So definitely, I'm not saying that you should invite people who abuse you into your life. Well, like freely all the time. You can set time boundaries, which could be like, we're going to stay at your house for 10 or 15 minutes, and the children can sit there quietly for 10 or 15 minutes, but then I need to let them run and play for a little while. So and you and the mother-in-law could discuss that together and say, well, how long were you expecting us to be here? I feel like the children really need to, they can learn to sit and be still, and that's okay. And what kind of experience do you want them to have here? So she may decide to set a boundary. Maybe she doesn't care that much about her ceramics and she would rather be with you and your children. So really, it's just a matter of communication and having those difficult conversations. So the other thing you could, if you're going to set a boundary, it could be one of space. We're going to meet in this space, but true, children can learn to be respectful of other people's property when they're old enough. Toddlers have a really hard time doing that, as Liz mentioned. But when we set boundaries, there will come a cost, to that boundary. We say it's to protect us, but it's also shutting people out to some extent. Let me just give you an example. When a few years ago, I had a very close friend, and we shared everything. We went on trips together. We really enjoyed being together. We were super close, shared a lot of really heartfelt conversations. And after a time, this friend stopped talking to me in that way. She would be really shallow and just like we were an acquaintance, just acquaintances. And we weren't close anymore. And I approached her one day and I asked her, what happened, why she was being kind of distant. And she acted like nothing had happened. And she goes, oh, we're fine, nothing's wrong. I was like, no, no, it's different, And I could tell that, we didn't spend as much time together. She never reached out to me. We didn't go on trips anymore. So the relationship had changed. And I grieved over that loss, the loss of that friendship. And she may have decided, I only have so much time and I'm only giving my time to, the A people in my life or the B people or whatever. And I don't know how you rate people, but when you set a boundary and you exclude someone from your circle, there's that disconnection. There's the chance that you could, you know, offend your friend. Like you cut them off, and then they're going to feel that loss, the loss of that friendship, and grieve over that and feel some heartache over that. And of course, sometimes we do need to break ties with people for different reasons. And I'm not saying that we need to just include everyone in our most inner circle, because we just can't do that. That's impossible. We don't have time to do that. But if you're talking about a close family member or a really close friend, I think you need to really, I would suggest and maybe invite you to look at that very closely, because I know people who have cut their parents out of their lives, or their grandparents out of their lives, or their siblings because of a hurt feeling or something. And so they're denying their children to know their grandparents. They're denying their children to know their aunts and uncles. And they're denying themselves an opportunity to grow. Because let's say somebody is toxic, you're, quote unquote toxic. So is there anything that you could learn from that person? Is the reason they're toxic because of how it makes you feel when you're around them? Do you feel all kinds of conflict inside? Do you feel turmoil? And if so, why? What is the turmoil? Is it maybe the person is teaching you something about yourself? Maybe there's a conversation that needs to happen. Maybe there's some conflict, some that needs to be resolved or something. So all I'm saying is that sometimes those can be opportunities for growth for us. If we're in a situation, in a relationship where there's conflict that comes up, we can resolve it in a peaceful way and still keep that person in our lives. We don't have to cut them out of our lives. And so when we use boundaries, I think we just need to be careful about it and make sure that it's one that we can live with, and that we aren't excluding people from our lives that could teach us something or that could help us get along with people better, could make us a better people person, which is really important. Those people skills, the conflict resolution, all of those things are really good for us to learn. But as the holidays approach, we can look at these relationships with our in-laws and that brother-in-law that is difficult, the brother-in-law that always brings up the topic that is most uncomfortable. Maybe it's okay to have a conversation with him, and maybe we can do it in a way that's mutually beneficial. That's just a possibility that I'm throwing out there. And also, when it comes to boundaries, we can draw the line as to what our values are and where we will not step over the line. So we as individuals decide what we will and will not do. And so we can be really clear about, I don't go to these kinds of movies. I don't participate in these kind of activities. And we can set that line and we can draw it and we can be true to that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to cut out people that do participate in those things. We can still try to have a meeting of the minds. We can learn from different perspectives. We can have a peaceful resolution where we're not cutting people out, even if we want to stay true to these values that we've set up for ourselves. So anyway, I hope that is helpful. That's just my 2 cents worth. And I'm Corinne Vance, your friendly life coach. And if you have any other questions, send them in to Dear Corinne, and I'd love to answer them for you.